Hello, and thank you for joining me for today's CM Live, the show for gun lovers by gun lovers. I'm Colion Noir, and our first guest is Alan Rice from the New Hampshire Firearms Coalition. How's it going?
It's going great. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. The pleasure is all mine. So, what is the New Hampshire Firearm Coalition all about?
Well, we were formed in 2003 with the singular focus of reforming the firearms laws in New Hampshire to benefit law-abiding people. We have individual members, businesses, manufacturers, and dealers amongst our membership. And we work on legislation at the state capitol in Concord to benefit people. Over the past years, we've been successful in passing statewide preemption, range protection, lawsuit immunity for dealers and manufacturers. In 2006, we were able to pass a bill that prohibits confiscation after an emergency like they had down in New Orleans after Katrina. That can't happen here. Plus, we fight all the bad bills, the gun taxes, the fees, the go to a mental health counselor or psychiatrist, lose your guns. We fought all of those, and we've been pretty successful. And we've been successful because we run an aggressive mail program. We involve the grassroots gun owners, and we make them part of it, and we encourage them to lobby their legislators because New Hampshire has a true citizen legislature. They receive $100 a year, so it's basically a volunteer position. And so it's volunteers working with volunteers, and we've fortunately, I'm proud to say, been very successful.
Awesome. Now, for people who don't know, what is the gun culture like in New Hampshire? Is it, if you had to analogize it to another state, is it very welcoming? Is it something that is kind of kept under wraps, or?
It's definitely not kept under wraps. Our laws are very favorable to firearms owners, but as I explained a minute ago, there's always room for improvement.
Absolutely.
There's always room to make them better. An awful lot of people carry firearms. We can own anything we want as long as it's federally legal. Class 3, machine guns, sound suppressors, it's all allowed in New Hampshire. The one bone of contention has been the concealed carry issue, which is what we've been working on for the past 2+ years. It's actually more than that, but it came to a head in 2015.
Yeah.
We've always been considered a shall-issue state. And over the past 8 to 10 years, there have been a series of court cases that have eaten away at that. And the Supreme Court has said the issuing authorities have what's called a limited amount of discretion in determining whether or not to issue a license. And we were finding people were getting denied licenses to carry who could lawfully go buy a gun from a licensed dealer. So they clearly weren't felons. And we felt we could go at it one of two ways. We could reform the license law, or we could copy Vermont and go to full constitutional carry. So we actually did a little of both. We passed a bill through the legislature that repeals the requirement to have a license for concealed, but we fixed the licensing law so anyone who wants a license can get it for reciprocity with the 27 states that honor a New Hampshire license.
Gotcha.
That was vetoed twice by the former governor. We're hopeful this might be the year. We have a new governor. He campaigned on it. He's talked about it. But, until the ink's dry, I'm always suspicious. He's still a politician.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. What is you mentioned something about the fact that some people would have the legal right to buy a gun, but then wouldn't have a legal right to own a gun in New Hampshire. What would be the basis for something like that?
Well, I didn't say to own it. I said to carry.
To carry. Gotcha.
We were finding that police chiefs were denying licenses to people who they disliked or who were applicants who were very rigid in that they wouldn't cooperate with any additional local requirements. The form is put forth by the state police, and that's the only application that can be used. And some chiefs have said, hey, we're going to add extra requirements, and some gun owners said, we're not going to play your game. So they ended up in court after a denial, and we were finding people getting denied licenses who could lawfully buy a gun. It's important to understand that our license is only for concealed and loaded on your person.
Gotcha.
Or loaded in a vehicle. You can walk down the street in New Hampshire with a gun exposed, and you don't need a license. But look behind me. We have a lot of snow on the ground. It's cold in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
People put on coats. And if they put on a coat, they need a license. So we're trying to repeal the requirement to have a license to conceal a handgun.
That was always very odd to me. I feel like politicians always like to attribute this nefariousness that comes with concealing a firearm. And I guess to some degree I could understand it, but it still doesn't make any sense in the real world. It's like you make a requirement that in order to conceal carry a gun, you have to have a license. But then if you open carry, you're fine. And I'm guessing it's made under the premise of we don't want criminals being able to hide their guns legally and be able to commit crimes. Yet and still, we are talking about criminals who don't obey the law to begin with, and what's concealed is concealed anyway. So I just always found it interesting how some places and some states like to make the distinction between having a license only, requiring a license only when something needs to be, when your gun is concealed versus when you're open carrying. I just find that odd. So with that being said, you've been dealing with some pretty big opposition. Tell us about that.
Well, the police chiefs are organized. They have an organization, and they've been aggressively lobbying against it. Then we have Mayor Bloomberg from New York City is coming up here, and he wants New York gun control in New Hampshire. Well, if he likes it so much, he can stay in New York and have gun control. We find that a lot of his supporters are bussed in from out of state. I've had state reps tell me that the caller IDs show up with out-of-state numbers. But they have a lot of money. Mayor Bloomberg is a billionaire. And the local police chiefs, they don't want to give up the ability to determine who gets to conceal a gun and who doesn't. And it's a problem. It's a unique problem here because a lot of open carry states in the South, a person can carry openly without a license, including in a vehicle. But in New Hampshire, you have to have the license for loaded in a vehicle. So it's a big problem. And the police chiefs are throwing up all kinds of false narratives, untruths, to the point of it's gotten to be almost laughable. They're saying that criminals and rapists will carry guns. Well, they're going to carry them anyway.
Pretty much.
The law says you can't carry it if you're prohibited by state or federal statute. So it's pretty clear. If you're a criminal, you're a criminal. You're not going to go apply for a license. I mean, the chiefs who are on our side, unfortunately, are quiet about it.
Yeah.
But they all tell me the guy walking in the front door to apply for the license is not my problem. But they're quiet. The vocal chiefs are our opponents, and they're pretty loud about it. But we've been able to generate quite a bit of mail to the governor's office and some phone calls, and we did an online petition. I printed out the petitions. They're about 12 inches high, so it's a good stack. And we're going to deliver them sometime this week. And I'm hopeful that he listens to the grassroots, which far outnumbers a handful of police chiefs.
Why do you think some of the police chiefs on your side are being so quiet?
I think they feel that they'd be ostracized by their colleagues. They need to work with their colleagues on legitimate law enforcement issues that have nothing to do with citizens carrying guns, and nobody wants to be that guy. They need to fit in and work together. Because you should understand, New Hampshire's made up of very small towns.
Yeah.
I mean, there's towns here that have 2,000 people in their own police department. And in order to function, neighboring towns work together.
Gotcha.
And they need that unity and cohesiveness. And I believe that's part of the reason that the good chiefs who will call me and email me privately won't come out publicly for this.
Gotcha. That must make sense. So what other projects do you guys have on your plate as well?
Well, we have a constant battle. We're in the Northeast, so we get a lot of transplants from other states, and then they get here and think, well, let's make it local. Well, if you liked it there so much, why
are you here? I can't stand that. They do that a lot in Austin, Texas here. But go ahead.
Well, a lot of them here because they work for large corporations that move them here. They're not necessarily here voluntarily. So we're constantly dealing with anti-gun bills. Just this year, we had a bill introduced that would have prohibited carrying a firearm while voting. I don't understand how someone is a legal, law-abiding, upstanding citizen when he's not voting, but the people who dislike firearms think when you walk into a polling location, you're going to become a criminal. It doesn't make sense to me. The legislature voted that down last week. Almost every year we see a bill dealing with prohibiting private sales or taxing gun sales or fees on guns, and we need to address all of those. What's unique about New Hampshire is every single bill gets a public hearing, and every single bill goes to the floor of the originating body, whether it be the House of Representatives or the Senate. So we need to pay attention to every single bill. They can't be killed In Washington, D.C., a committee chairman can stop a bill by not holding a hearing. It
Gotcha.
doesn't work like that in New Hampshire. Everything is heard, so we have to be on top of everything. So that keeps us on our toes from January through about June.
I mean, I think that's a good thing because I think for a lot of us in the gun community, we become complacent pretty easily. When something's not right in front of our face, we think everything's all good and well, and that's not necessarily the case.
It's not, because they conspire behind closed doors to work against us, and then by the time they come out from behind closed doors,
It's too late.
you have a short amount of time to mobilize. So I like our system a lot better.
Yeah.
But I'm also used to our system.
No, I hear you, man, and I it's just interesting to see how, especially when you point out the fact that you had people being bussed in to your area who aren't necessarily from there, but then trying to bring in anti-gun ideals into a community that is inherently pro-gun. It's just so insidious. It just frustrates me in a lot of ways. But
There's people in the country who really dislike firearms,
Yeah.
and they've obviously never been to Vermont. Vermont has never regulated concealed carry for 200 years.
yeah,
They're consistently ranked one of the safest places on earth. An awful lot of people carry an awful lot of guns in Vermont.
yeah,
Almost as many people carry them here, and Maine just passed a similar law in 2015, and hasn't been any problems. I'm close enough that I see the local papers up in Maine.
yeah,
There haven't been, and you would see it in Texas because it would be national news.
pretty much.
And there haven't been any problems, so we need to do the same thing here in New Hampshire and move ahead and drive on with it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you very much, Alan, and definitely keep us posted on your fight up there, man.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Coming up next, we've all seen it, gun owners unfairly prosecuted by the criminal justice system. So how can we prepare for the trouble later? After this break, we'll come back and we'll talk about that.